Hello, 8th graders. We're continuing to read the story of the greatest treasure hunt in history, the story of the Monuments Men. And we just finished the piece where he located the Madonna. Just incredibly difficult to believe that the statue is standing when you can see this gaping hole in the roof from the bombs that fell and the destruction. And he has located it. And we are beginning there on page 152. Hancock couldn't find the curé, the parish priest, but a Monsieur Georges offered to help. Monsieur Georges' bandaged head and weary look made Hancock think he might be in greater need of assistance than the Madonna. Upon hearing Hancock's intent and reading the bishop's letter, Monsieur Georges resolutely stated that the Madonna was going nowhere. The battle had passed and the sculpture had survived. It was safe inside the church, he insisted, and that's where it would remain. In an effort to appease the Monuments Man, Monsieur Georges convened a meeting of the dozen or so villagers in what remained of his home and proposed that the sculpture be relocated to his cellar. Two men objected to that idea. The village mason stated with certainty that moving the sculpture was a physical impossibility. He had personally cemented the wooden sculpture to its stone base in such a way that the two were inseparable. After taking all this in, Hancock raised the possibility that perhaps the sculpture and stone base could together be freed from the wooden floorboards. The mason nodded. Yes, perhaps that could be done. Then the village notary, with his steely eyes, spoke softly but authoritatively, stating that the sculpture would remain exactly where it was, period. No need for further discussion. Realizing that emotions had overwhelmed reason, Hancock had an idea. Perhaps a new solution might emerge if they continued the discussion in the church, where they could all see the Madonna. The small group walked the short distance to the front door of the mangled church. Hancock started to step through the small shell hole, but hearing the sound of keys, he turned and followed the villagers using the main entrance. The motley crew gathered in a circle around the statue, waiting for someone to resume the discussion. Snow had started falling through the gaping hole in the roof, lightly dusting the Madonna. A gust of wind shifted one of the already loosened pieces of timber overhead, releasing a chunk of plaster that narrowly missed the Madonna and the head of the village notary. Mustering all the diplomacy he could, Hancock looked at the notary, but asked the group if they still thought it a good idea to leave the Madonna inside the church. For a moment, all anyone could hear was the howl of the wind overhead, the squeak of a roof beam rocking back and forth, some loose papers and leaves rustling, and the almost imperceptible sound of snow gently landing. Just as Hancock had hoped, the notary spoke first. I propose that the statue be moved to the cellar of the house of Monsieur Georges. Everybody nodded. The mason had not exaggerated one bit. Separating the statue from the base was impossible. It took the collective effort of everyone, using 2 timber planks to rock the pedestal loose. They then placed the Madonna and its stone base atop the boards and used them like a battlefield litter. Moving it out the doorway of the church and down the icy path to Monsieur Georges' cellar required the balance of a ballet dancer and the brute strength of a wrestler. No one in the procession exerted more of himself than the village notary. On the drive back to First Army headquarters, Hancock replayed the day's events over and over in his head. Working with local townspeople to protect the Madonna, their most revered cultural treasure, was a fundamental element of being a monuments officer. While salvaging a work of art was of course important, it was the act of demonstrating respect for the cultural treasures of others that filled him with a sense of mission accomplished. The whole experience provided encouragement for what he knew would be difficult days ahead. And if you look at the picture, it says Monument Man Captain Walker Hancock. So he's the one with the helmet in the front of the line, leads the procession of townspeople as they relocate the Madonna of L'Église. And what's amazing to me is that we have that photograph, that someone actually took that photograph in 1945, and that the photograph was preserved. To have that photo for you and for others in this book, it's amazing. Okay, we're going to read just a little further on the bottom of page 155. Near Florence, Italy, February 1945. The bitter cold winter that gripped all of Europe validated the decision of Allied leaders in Italy to rest their troops and prepare for an offensive in the spring. 5th and British 8th armies had tried in vain to blow through the Gothic line and link up at Bologna, where they would then drive into the Po River Valley together to take northern Italy. The rainy autumn and a stubbornly entrenched Wehrmacht defense unraveled the plan. Now German troops continued work reinforcing their positions, well aware of the battle that was coming. In the interim, the two sides still skirmished from time to time where their lines met, adding to the casualties being moved back from the front. Dean Keller and Fred Hart spent their time supervising temporary repairs in some of the many damaged towns they had inspected. Their concern about the missing Florentine treasures continued, but with German forces in control of northern Italy, there wasn't anything they could do about it, even if they knew the precise location. In mid-February, Keller had to figure out how to move a massive 350-year-old bronze statue of Cosimo I de' Medici, the great Florentine ruler, and his horse from a Tuscan villa 14 miles back to its original location in Florence. The task seemed simple. Florentine art officials had moved the 8-ton sculpture to the countryside on an ox-drawn cart in 1943, but passage was threatened by pending repairs to a railroad bridge damaged during combat, adding to the urgency of Keller's assignment. So this was an 8-ton sculpture. Okay, so you know how many pounds are in a ton? 2,000 pounds are in 1 ton. So if this is 8 tons, how many pounds is that? I hope you said 16,000 pounds, because 1 ton is 2,000, 8 tons, 16,000 pounds. So they needed to move a 16,000 pound sculpture back to its original location. And with the first time they did it, you think about it, they did that on an ox cart, not in a vehicle, not in a truck. After several days of planning and preparation, working in some of the muddiest conditions he had experienced, Keller arranged for a crane to hoist Cosimo onto the back of a truck, moving the far larger and heavier horse, which was standing in a trotting position atop a wooden skid with its front and rear legs astride a crisscross stack of logs for stability, proved far more difficult. It took 3.5 hours to pull the skid into position on the tank trailer using a primitive moving technique Keller likened to a Maine-back countryman moving a house with pulleys and tackle and a horse for the power, but it worked. Keller's driver and friend, Charlie Bernholtz, acted as traffic warden for the convoy, but Keller still needed a volunteer to ride atop the horse and lift the telephone and telegraph wires along the route into the city.
Okay, so now imagine this. They're putting this bronze sculpture, 16,000 pounds, on a truck, flat truck, but it's so tall that as they go through the city or try to get through the city to get it back, the height is going to hit the power lines. So they need a volunteer to sit on the top of the horse, on the top of the truck, so that when they come close to the power lines, the person can lift them up so that all of this doesn't get tangled and pull the power and telegraph lines down. Okay, well, first, all of that's very dangerous. One, just sitting on the horse, but the other is touching power lines and trying to push them out of the way. So I don't know what they did. Let's see if we can figure out. Keller's driver and friend, Charlie Bernholtz, acted as traffic warden for the convoy, but Keller still needed a volunteer to ride atop the horse and lift the telephone and telegraph wires along the route into the city. A boisterous GI named Smokey eagerly mounted Cosimo's horse and straddled the hole where the Florentine ruler and his saddle would normally be joined. As they approached the town, the driver of a horse-drawn carriage pulled even with the truck, raised his hat, and beaming ear to ear shouted to Smokey and Keller, "Cosimo, welcome back." Soon they reached the Piazza della Signoria in the center of Florence, where Fred Hart and Lucky 13, superintendent of Florentine galleries Giovanni Poggi, and a few hundred curious citizens braving the rain greeted them. Somehow they made it. We're going to stop right there on page 157. Hope you've taken a couple of peeks at the pictures of what they're doing, which again, just having these pictures is amazing. And we'll begin at the bottom of page 157 tomorrow. Thanks so much, 8th graders, and take care of yourselves. See you later. Bye.